We are Looking Forward Our Way. Looking Forward Our Way podcast addresses today's critical issues for those 50 and over involving our money and our neighborhood. Our expert guests provide information, resources, and ideas for you, our listener, at the click of a link. New episodes are available every first and third Monday of every month. You can find out more by going to our website, lookingforwardourway.com. Hi, this is Brett. For decades, the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission, as we call MORPC, has led the strategic transportation planning for our communities. Today, we're going to dive into the issues and provide the context needed for the November 2024 ballot initiative. And you're kind of going, there's an initiative on the ballot?
Yes.
Yes, there is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hey, Brett.
Yeah.
So, the inside joke that you and I have is that every time MORPC comes to our studio, I sit in traffic on 71 to get here. Transportation is a huge discussion in Central Ohio. I don't know anybody who is not just throwing up their hands in their car because they can't get anywhere. But we don't have the crushing gridlock that many other cities have. We need to build our transportation. It hasn't really been built to meet the growth of the region. Planning for our future is necessary. Today, we welcome Maria Schopper from MORPC. She is the Transportation Study Director, and congratulations to her. It's a new role she's taking on. Maria's going to give us the details we need on the transportation issues and challenges and how the fall levy will benefit our region. Maria, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
Before we get into the weeds of what we want to cover in this episode, we want to hear more about you being your first time on our podcast. We usually go into where did you come from? What did you do? How did you get to where you are today, today's episode? So if you want to give us a little background on your expertise, why you're here, we'd love to hear about it.
Okay, I'd love to tell you about it. So I am a Central Ohio native. I was born and raised here in Central Ohio, and I've spent all but a few years of my life here. And that was when I was studying urban planning and development at Ball State University, which is in Muncie, Indiana. And then after graduation, I decided to move down to Florida and spent about 6 years doing transportation planning consulting work before I decided I'd had enough of the sunshine and wanted to come home. So for the past 11 years, I've been back here in Central Ohio, where I've been working at the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission. As you mentioned, our friends call us MORPC, and where I'm currently serving as the Director of Transportation. And in that role, I oversee MORPC's function as our region's metropolitan planning organization, as well as our rural transportation planning organization. And these two entities are responsible for coordinating with local governments in our region on planning, prioritizing, and programming federal transportation dollars within our planning area, among other collaboration and technical assistance. And so I've been working in transportation for my whole career, and Central Ohio is a great place to be.
I know somebody has to do it, and I'm really glad it's you and not me. Transportation is a difficult. There's so many different pieces to it, and you can't let anything fall through the cracks. Needless to say, the roads have to stand up to car traffic, truck traffic. But also, our audience knows that Brett and I always have a bit of a little competition on the guests that come in and which one of us bring the guest in and how many, it's like how many little ticks are in my column and how many little ticks are in his column. Well, much to my surprise, I found Maria through her colleagues at MORPC, and out of the clear blue sky, it turns out I grew up with Maria's dad. And so shout out to Mike and Kay, and hopefully they will, don't forget to Google us and Mike and give us a thumbs up on this podcast. There we go. Brett's just
a shameless family plug.
Shameless family
gosh.
plug. Absolutely. Absolutely. So Maria, we're going to get back to work here now. We told her we go off on our own little tangents. Let's first discuss MORPC and the role it plays in our community. It is more than just roads and bikeways. That's where a lot of people hear about it because of all of the changes that have been happening around our region. give us a little bit of an overview of the work accomplished by MORPC and why it's so important that this happens.
Sure. So MORPC is a regional council made up of here in Central Ohio. And our mission is really to be a regional voice, to be a trusted convener and catalyst, and to bring Central Ohio communities together to collaborate on best practices and plan for the future. And our vision is to drive the future prosperity and sustainability of the Central Ohio region. And to do this, there's several focus areas that we work in, transportation and mobility being one of them, but just one of them. And we do work as an agency in community and economic development. We recently got a regional designation as an economic development district, which opens up another whole funding source from another federal agency that we can tap into. Planning and sustainability, so looking at air quality and water quality and regional water planning. Data and mapping, so we are a regional source for data and mapping, but really, we're doing population and employment forecasts, looking at travel data and traffic volumes, and kind of we are a source for data for studies and plans throughout the region. We do work in public policy, so working with our local governments and liaising with our leaders in the state and state and federal levels to just following policy that impacts our local communities. And again, and on the kind of the other end is engagement. We're engaging with the public. We're engaging with property owners or just any stakeholders involved in whatever study or plan that might be happening. And then we also have a direct services program, a couple of home repair and weatherization services that we offer. Homes weatherized, and we'll talk about all of the important work that MORPC does in all of those areas, but focusing on transportation and mobility, a couple, so specifically, we lead the region's long-range transportation plan. We develop that every 4 years, and that essentially keeps our region eligible for federal transportation dollars. And the current plan identifies about $35 billion worth of transportation infrastructure priorities through 2050. And so we then work with our local government partners to advance those priorities in a number of ways. That could be through managing and administering a number of funding programs that kind of come through our office, and that for building multimodal infrastructure to build safer, more reliable, and efficient travel. We offer technical assistance and capacity building for planning activities with our local government entities. And then, we do things like, it's not just infrastructure when we're talking about transportation. We're working on services and programs to connect older adults and individuals with disabilities to enhance mobility services and helping them get to their medical appointments. And then we also work with employers to incentivize sustainable commutes and connect interested commuters with options like van pools and ride sharing. So we're doing a lot of important work across the region.
It's huge. And I think as so many of our resources in Central Ohio, it's like MORPC is well known in parts of the community and not known at all in other parts of the community. And it is an incredible resource. That's why I love having you all come to our podcast, because for our audience, this levy that's coming up is really important. And we want to make sure that you have not just hear some of this information, but have a place to go to read more about it so you understand the long-term implications, because that 70-71 split is already, 10 years old, and the reconstruction of it, and we got another 10 or 20 to go. It's a long-term plan to fix these things and to build roads into Intel and make sure Polaris Parkway keeps moving where I live, those kinds of things. And it's just so important. So thank you again for being with us today.
Right. Well, and to your point, Carol, the continued success of Columbus, our region is dependent on those transportation gateways. So if we can't get to work, go play, medical appointments, or a grocery store, the economy is going to suffer. But transportation planning does take decades. We just talked about, how long that split's been, in the plans and now being worked on, and we're finally seeing some flyover, work being done, which is kind of cool, but you kind of go, when can I drive on that?
Yes.
But there are a few funding sources for that, and the competition for dollars is fierce. We have a region-wide comprehensive mobility investment strategy called LinkUS that's targeting the transit needs of individuals, reviews business investment in the region, housing issues, and more. Now, Maria, could you give us the highlights of LinkUS?
Yeah, so at its core, COTA's levy is about connecting more people to more opportunities and making sure that as our region grows, we're growing better. And so this levy is an initiative for an $8 billion plan to create faster, more reliable public transportation, and that includes a 45% increase to existing transit service by introducing the region's first ever bus rapid transit system. We're expecting to be able to build 5 bus rapid transit corridors by 2050. And sometimes bus rapid transit is referred to as BRT in the alphabet soup lingo. And I'll pause there to just talk about bus rapid transit because it is a new concept in our community. And so the benefits of bus rapid transit are, you can think of it as a subway on wheels. It offers faster, more reliable transit with premium features and amenities. So that would be like dedicated guideway on our street. So it travels in its own lane. The vehicle travels in its very own lane, has level and multi-door boarding, off-board fare collection to make for efficient on and off, modern clean energy buses with transit signal priority when you're approaching intersections. So think of it as there's a red light and there's a queue of cars lining up, but that transit vehicle will be in its lane approaching the light, and it'll talk to the signal, and that signal will change to green for that transit to go through before the other vehicle. So bus rapid transit really operates just like light rail, but it's 1/6 of the cost. But in addition, this COTA's levy initiative is not just about bus rapid transit. They're looking at improving frequency on existing COTA bus routes, expanding service hours on existing COTA bus routes, and adding an additional 8 COTA Plus zones. And if you're not familiar with COTA Plus, there's currently 3 zones in the community where if you are located in that zone, it's almost operates like an Uber app. You can call up an on-demand service. It'll pick you up where you are and take you to a transit stop within that zone. And they've been really successful. People really like them. And so looking at adding 8 more of those around the community.
And I don't want to get you too far off but is that for particular populations, like for older adults or disabled or?
No, it's for
anyone?
anybody.
Nice.
You just need the app and
there you go.
You can call them up. And so while transit is important, I think another equally important part of a dedicated funding program, dedicated funding source for sidewalks, for walkable communities and safe access to transit service, creating safe and expanded bike paths and trails. And it's estimated that this dedicated fund would generate about $60 million per year, which is an unprecedented rate of investment in our region's sidewalks, bikeways, and trail network. And so combined, these investments will create walkable, bikeable communities with safer and more affordable access to work, home, education, amenities, and really just increasing quality of life in Central Ohio. So, as you mentioned, COTA has a levy on the November ballot. It will ask voters to approve a 0.5% sales tax increase, which will replace the existing COTA sales tax of a 0.5%. So there's that existing 0.5% is currently made up of 0.25% temporary and 0.25% permanent. So with this new 1% permanent sales tax is what would replace that. And that really is, that 1% is really in line with our peers in Cuyahoga County, up in Cleveland, which is at 1%. Their regional transit authority is collecting about 1%. And Hamilton County in Cincinnati is close at about 0.8%. So I think when you think about that, and you think about Columbus being a growing region.
And larger than the other two.
Well, and the only growing region in Ohio at that. We really, so this is about kind of making that local commitment to transportation improvements in our growing region and keeping up with the demand.
So I think that the important part of all of this is that, audience, what you will see when you vote this fall is a COTA levy, but it is much bigger than just the buses you see, in the middle of downtown traffic. And it is issue number 47 if you live within the COTA service area.
Yes.
So it's all of Franklin County plus a little bit outside of Franklin County if you are living in the COTA service area. So you really kind of want to get a handle on where you fall in that.
Yeah, that's correct. So as you mentioned, the COTA service area is all of Franklin County and all of the communities within Franklin County. And then there's certain areas in Dublin where Dublin bleeds into Union County, the Polaris area that goes into Delaware, Reynoldsburg where it goes into Fairfield, and Licking. So those small little slivers that go outside of Franklin County are considered part of the COTA service area and will have the opportunity to participate on, and that will be on their ballot.
So, Maria, the LinkUS report covers not just Columbus County we mentioned, but in total, this plan in
and so here's how we see COTA's levy addressing or helping to address this. We know that with rapid transit corridors, we'll also capture economic and housing development benefits along those corridors as well. And so I'll refer to a case study that on rapid transit investments that have achieved similar goals to the COTA levy. So a local neighbor in Ohio, the Cleveland Health Line, is a 7.1 mile long bus rapid transit line. It opened in 2008, and there's about 4.5 miles of dedicated transit lanes on the Health Line. So what we're talking about here in Columbus. It cost $200 million to build, but has delivered more than $9.5 billion in economic development, which is $190 gained for every dollar spent in creating and launching the service. And so it is looked at as one of the most cost beneficial infrastructure projects of any kind. And so really that translated, and so kind of to bring it back to housing and jobs here, what does that actually mean? Along the Health Line, it created 8,800 residential units and 13,000 new jobs along that bus rapid transit corridor. And so this model represents, what COTA is looking to achieve with more COTA service, sidewalks, and bike paths. And I guess to kind of bring it back home and how we expect to capture those benefits here in Columbus, I think the best place to start is this effort has been a partnership with COTA, MORPC, the City of Columbus, and Franklin County, and so we've been able to work closely with the City of Columbus. As you know, they are working on their Zone In initiative, which is they undertook the first comprehensive zoning update in 70 years. And so what included as part of that, they started focusing first on the bus rapid transit corridors and looking at the zoning along those corridors. So they're looking at creating 6 new mixed-use zones on 12,300 parcels along these transit lines. And when you look at the existing code along the transit lines on those parcels, about 6,000 homes could be built without variances based on existing land use or existing zoning policy. But with the revisions that they're working on, we estimate that about 88,000 homes could be built and on those same parcels. And that's about 44% of the region's housing demand. And that could potentially be accomplished in 10 years. So it's really about, attracting that development, removing the barriers to these corridors. And so that as we grow, we can grow in a way that provides options, not only transportation options, but housing options, and having that diversity really makes it all more affordable.
Can you put a mental map to those corridors? Are you talking like High Street, Broad Street, that kind of thing?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think putting it tangibly on something we can see in our head, it puts some tangibility to this. And I'm sure that's what you're talking about, but I think if we put some street names to this and you kind of go, I was thinking about it too while you're talking about it, it's like, yeah, that could help develop up High Street where it's been, a lot of I don't want to call them blight necessarily, but undeveloped buildings that have been empty for a while in downtown Columbus. So we've always talked about the exodus of downtowns, of the death of Main Street in small communities. Will help create.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I apologize.
No.
I was just going on. I forgot to even mention that there are 3 bus rapid transit corridors currently being designed right now. And so those corridors, the first one is West Broad, which goes from downtown out west. That is in 60% design, complete. Should be completed by the end of the year. So all the planning.
That place is already developed without this. If you think about it, I mean, how it's on West Broad, which is great. It's ready for it.
Yeah, it's ready for infill,
yes,
redevelopment.
Right.
But there are also, we have to keep in mind that there are existing residences, existing neighborhoods that we want to keep intact as well.
Exactly.
So on West Broad, if funding is secured, construction would begin in 2025 with service starting in 2028 or 2029. Kind of next in line is East Main. And that if that funding is secured, it would begin in 2029 or 2030. And then what we call the Northwest Corridor, which is a connection. So phase 1 is connecting downtown up to Bethel Road along Olentangy River Road. Future phases would connect it on up to Dublin. And so that's in about 10% design, so it's not quite as far along as the other 2. But the 3 LinkUS corridor, these 3 corridors, they'll utilize dedicated lanes for bus rapid transit, newly designed stations. So that's the other thing we're talking about land use is these stations, because they are maybe a bench. These are going to be premium stations with amenities, and developers are going to want to have services there, to build there. And so, whether that's employers or daycare, a grocery store, these are activity centers that, people, businesses know that people are going to be at frequently. So there's that aspect as well as just identifying these kind of stations and nodes of activity centers.
Yeah, kind of a multi-purpose exit enter center.
Right.
It's like dry cleaning, daycare. That's what you do,
exactly.
And then boom, go to work from there or wherever it might be. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And so we expect that the bus rapid transit will operate in 15-minute or less intervals. So people aren't going to be waiting at stations for a long time. And really just that quicker, more reliable service. So,
without digging huge tunnels below our city.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. Well, which is great in regards to what we stated at the beginning, that it takes planning, and what's put together now is addressing what is needed in 10, 15, 20, 25 years, potentially, or at least has the fluidity of being able to be morphed a little bit here, change here. So before we get into the new levy, though, let's do some background on funding we've already received to meet Central Ohio's transportation needs. That's 7071 fix, building and repaving roads, serving projects like Intel. Let's talk about what's already been accomplished that will allow us to succeed with the LinkUS plan.
Yeah, so this has been a process kind of in the making for at least a decade. We've been, as a region, expecting to grow for a long time, for at least that long. And back almost 10 years ago now, MORPC actually did a study. It was called Insight 2050, and it looked at just the impacts of different development patterns. So if we continue to develop, kind of the status quo as we're developing now, what are those impacts on fiscal sustainability, on our local governments? How much more is it going to cost to provide services, transportation services, utility costs? How much more land consumption would be taken up? What does the footprint of our region look like as far as developed lands? And then what does that look like if we just change, if we focus our growth on a few key corridors and increase the amount of infill development, increase just dare I say the density in focused areas, how can we, does that help us accommodate the growth a little better? And then, there was a series of scenarios that looked at just what are the impacts, and that study really, kind of equipped us and equipped our local communities to understand, in their decision making, what the impacts of their land use policies and transportation infrastructure decisions are. And so, then we looked at, okay, well, if we want to look in at these corridors, and what is that? Okay, how does that actually look? What are the what is the potential for these transit corridors to actually grow? We know we're growing. We focus that growth and grow where we want to focus it. It can also help preserve areas of our region that maybe don't want to grow as much, or aren't interested. They want to keep their rural feel. So,
you always have that pushback from residents.
Exactly.
You just will, because they want it to stay the same. They want it preserved.
Right.
What they rightly probably should, maybe, but yeah, you're always going to have the pushback to a certain degree. Yeah.
So, those studies led to, COTA then developed their what they called Next Gen, where they identified a series of corridors that could be ripe for high capacity or rapid transit, and then that kind of developed into there's looking at which ones are the most ready, and that kind of led us into narrowing down the corridors and identifying which ones are ready to move forward. And so this doesn't come out of nowhere. It has been. We've been planning for this for at least a decade.
Well, and I think a lot of it is really based on the knowledge that we made mistakes when we originally put the highway system through the United States. Back in the 50s and early 60s, I know your dad can remember, we would go to our mutual aunt's house who lived next door to where 71 was being dug. Looked like the city had been bombed out, because it was just this huge hole that split the Linden neighborhoods from the Clintonville neighborhoods. And the impact was unbelievable.
Yep. Yeah.
And to today.
Yeah, I have heard that story a couple of times.
Oh, yes.
And to your point, if I mentioned those, the residents in our community who are, don't have access to a car, or are really struggling to, afford to travel in our region. You look at where those populations are living, and they're highly concentrated in the areas that have been impacted by these historical policies.
Right. And it's not really laying blame on the city of Columbus. I don't think we had much choice, because the U.S. government was saying we are going to unite all the states, and 70 just went right across the country till it hit the Rockies. So but there were a lot of mistakes. So this long range planning is so important, which really brings the value of having MORPC here. To help guide all of the different communities with all of their own individual wants, needs, strengths, and challenges. So one thing that I don't think we really covered when we talked about MORPC, there are regional planning commissions all across the country, and they're called different things. MORPC is not an anomaly.
No.
How many are in Ohio?
So I guess I can speak from the Metropolitan Planning Organization perspective, and as our function as the MPO, we are federally mandated that any urbanized area with at least 50,000 population has what we call an MPO, or a Metropolitan Planning Organization. So I should know how many are in Ohio, but I don't want to pull the number off the top of my head.
We know we've got at least a dozen metropolitan areas. So.
Yeah. Okay.
And so all across the country, there are organizations, regional planning commissions that are focused more on land use, depending on, in Ohio, we have what we're called a home rule state. So our local jurisdictions have complete authority over their land use policies. So a regional organization like MORPC, we do not, dictate, or, we can't tell our communities how to develop. What we do is we can offer tools and studies and technical assistance and coordination.
Right.
We know that transportation doesn't stop when you hit the city line. So
But yeah, the big joke is we all want to be on the streets that Westerville clears in the winter, and County Line Road is the limit, and thank goodness they do both ways. They don't just do the southern part of it. So yeah, no, it is fluid. Transportation is fluid. So Maria, the LinkUS program is done, ready to move. You've already identified the first steps. Why don't you give us a little bit more about how this is going to get started once funding is available?
So I mentioned the 3 bus rapid transit corridors that are already in design and moving forward. I also want to mention the bikeways, sidewalks, and trails that are part of this dedicated fund that will be created if the levy passes. And so we've actually identified the first project priorities that would be funded should the levy pass in November. And as I mentioned, it's about $60 million annually that we're expecting. And so MORPC has collaborated with our partners in COTA and other local jurisdictions to identify and prioritize what those transit supportive infrastructure projects are. That's kind of what we call them. These are projects that are making it safer and easier to access transit via walking, biking, or on a trail. And so we've identified what we think we could be developed and constructed by 2030. And so that initial, and it's exciting because it's the first ever regional capital improvement program of specific bike and pedestrian infrastructure projects. So it includes 150 miles of improvements. That's 83 different projects. They touch 35 different jurisdictions within the COTA service area. And actually 55 of those projects are what we would consider multi-jurisdictional projects. So they are serving the city of Columbus, and they keep going on to other communities. So, some of them are serving up to, maybe 5-6 different jurisdictions on the project. And so we think that about 65 of these projects could be under construction by 2030 if they are funded. And what I think is really important is that and by our estimations, with these projects in place, we think that it will connect 140,000 more people to a 10 or 15 minute walk or bike to transit, and 44,000 more jobs would be within a 10 or 15 minute walk or bike to a fixed route transit stop.
The big joke is in Columbus, there's 2 seasons, winter and orange barrel season. So it looks like, audience, although none of us like those orange barrels, this is really, really important that our city infrastructure is getting strengthened or built so that we can continue to grow. I mean, I can remember growing up, and when Columbus moved past 500,000 residents, it was a big deal. And now we're talking about 3 million people in our community by 2050. And that's really just kind of around the corner for young folks, definitely. And that was one of the things I wanted to bring. I knew I'd remember this. One of the things I wanted to bring up, it seems that transportation needs and wants change with generations. So my generation grew up on, it's a car city. We got around in cars, or when you're little, your bicycle. But younger generations, this is what they are looking for. So really now, and even though housing is tough, it's certainly a lot less than what you would pay for a $1 million, 500 square feet apartment in New York City.
So the development of the
information going out into the community to neighborhood groups, business groups, churches, local governments, just anyone who will have us really. And there's also, we're with our partners working on or hosting what we call town hall events throughout the region where they're open to the public. It's really kind of more informal. It's question and answer. Just get all your pressing questions answered. And I guess the other ways, we're present on social media. So if it's at LinkUS Columbus is the handle. There's a YouTube channel at LinkUS Columbus that has a lot of videos and presentations that we've made at various events. There's also a really interesting outreach toolkit on the website. So, LinkUsColumbus.com has a ton of informational videos, interviews with local community members, kind of telling their story about how their experience with transit, or how they currently use transit or trails or sidewalks, and so. That's really, I guess, we'd encourage people to stay connected, in the modern age of the internet and social media. So really, in addition to that, I guess I'll just emphasize that we are really trying to reach as many people as possible by going, meeting them where they're at, going to their events in the community.
So if a member of our audience is interested in getting somebody from MORPC to talk to them, their group, all they need to do is contact MORPC?
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Okay. And we'll have that information on our website.
Okay, great.
Okay, good. I gave Maria fair warning that she was not allowed to come here and not bring information about trains. I have this goal in my lifetime to get a train from Columbus to Chicago. So any news? When am I going to be able to buy my ticket?
Sure.
And am I actually going to get to Chicago or someplace else?
We can travel within our region. The passenger rail effort would provide another way to travel to other regions in our states and
or
across
get those
state lines.
Folks to come to us.
Exactly.
Yes.
And so the Federal Rail Administration is funding the study of two corridors two passenger rail corridors that would serve Central Ohio. So one of the lines is called the 3C and D line, which would connect Columbus to Cleveland and Cincinnati and Dayton. And that study is being led by the Ohio Rail Development Commission. The other study is referred to as the Midwest Connect, which would connect Columbus to Pittsburgh in the east, potentially a stop in Newark. And going west, it would connect to Fort Wayne, Indiana, and on to Chicago with potentially a stop or two in between. And that study is being led by the city of Fort Wayne. And MORPC is supporting the study of both corridors. And this is a big deal because Central Ohio has not had passenger rail service since 1979.
Right.
So,
but I really have to thank Fort Wayne for a ticket to Chicago.
They're kind of up in their game against Indianapolis. If you think about that, it's like good for them.
Yeah,
wow,
really.
Interesting.
Yeah, they were the lead applicants to the Federal Rail Administration's program, and then the lead recipient. So it's been a great partnership with essentially a 5-state coalition. If you think about it, it's Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, a little sliver of West Virginia, and Pennsylvania. So truly a regional, interregional collaboration.
Just like 70 will take you to Indianapolis, 33 is going to take you to Fort Wayne from here. So really there is a natural shot to go. I mean, not that they would use that corridor, but it's that you can get there from here. Pretty much a straight shot.
I never thought I was going to have to thank Fort Wayne, Indiana to get me to Chicago. But yeah, go for it.
No,
that's good.
Cool.
That's good. I'm ready. My Visa card is out. Thank you for clarifying that.
Exactly.
Wait, she didn't give me a timeline, though.
Okay, so let me, I can tell you. I have more information. Okay. So both of those corridors are on parallel planning tracks, if we're talking about transportation puns here. But so they are on parallel tracks as part of the Federal Rail Administration's corridor identification program. So that's this grant program that is funded. They're going through the same process, each of these corridors, and it is a 3-step process. We are just kicking off step 1.
Oh, well.
Okay, step 1 is it's the selection and initiation of the corridor. So what does that mean? That is developing the scope, the schedule, and the cost estimate to prepare a service development plan. So it's like just scope, what does that plan look like? Like what are the tasks in a service development plan, which is step 2. So both corridors were awarded $500,000 to just take that initial step and just kind of get organized and looking at this massive planning effort that we're about to undertake. So step 2 is that route planning and preparing a service development plan. So that's where you get into the detail of the route alignment, where exactly are the stations going to be located, what are the capital improvements that are needed, what does the service actually look like.
It's really more than just putting those trains on tracks that still exist.
It really is.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Or in the middle of a 4-lane highway.
Yeah.
or they're now a bike path.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. So step 1, that first planning process that we're in now, we expect to take 6 months to complete. Okay. So 6 to 12 months. So looking at probably middle of next year to wrap that up. That service development plan, or step 2, will be more like 1 to 3 years to complete. It's a pretty hefty undertaking. And then step 3 would be project development. So that's where you're actually, taking the plan that you just developed and, doing the engineering, the environmental review, like really going through that project development process to build and construct the infrastructure and any that's needed and provide the service. And so that would be another 1 to 3 years to complete. And so in addition, I guess I'll say, in addition to supporting these studies that are ongoing, MORPC, we are continuing to convene and engage the communities that are potentially located on one of these corridors. So just to ensure that we're planning and coordinating, helping these communities to be service development plan, veer into their communities, and just what are the other planning considerations and coordination considerations that challenges that would need to be shared. And so I guess the 2 things I would stress are the program we're in gets the corridors ready for final design and construction and service. And the good thing about the program is that it puts us higher on the priority list nationally for funding those phases. So by going through this program, we're
you're showing you're serious.
Yeah, exactly. We're raising our hands.
We're doing this.
Well,
exactly.
That's a true point, because there were years where people were saying,
talk.
let's do it. And Ohio was saying, nah.
Right.
No. So
right.
That's. Yeah. But I thought I was going to do this by my 70th birthday, but at this rate, it may be my 100th.
Well, our goal,
a little ways down the road.
Well, and I'll say the goal is still 2030. Our system right now, the gears are turning, but they're turning slowly. And so, but on the other side, talking about, we're raising our hand, we're going to get priority. It also sets up a structured partnership with the Federal Rail Administration for the work that's being done, and so that having their assistance and kind of having them along the way, step by step, will go a long way in planning these corridors. Right. So
Good.
Okay.
Good.
All right.
All right.
Well, thanks for joining us today. This is, we always learn something from it. It's critical for our listener and voters for this November too. I mean, we all three are encouraging everyone, do your research. We're not advocating one way or the other. It's just laying out what the future could look like. But you got to,
and what the future won't look like if it doesn't pass.
As well too. So again, there's pros and cons to everything. There is, but it's one of those. What kind of future do you want to have for Central Ohio? So again, not advocating one way or the other, but there's potential here. This is what it could look like. But before we finish, do you have any last tips for our listeners other than just patience?
I guess kind of along the lines that you were just mentioning, Brett. Growth is coming. We're not going to be able to stop it, but we can be prepared for it. And, I think that's really what this is about, is planning for our kids and our grandkids to have access to opportunities and an excellent quality of life here in Central Ohio. So
wonderful. Maria, thank you. This has been incredible. And we are so thankful to MORPC's support and always making sure that we have somebody that we can call and tap into and convince to come around the corner, because we're really just around the corner from your office. So thank you again for joining us. So many thanks to our expert guest, Maria Schopper, who is the Transportation Study Director for the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission. Listeners, thank you for joining us. Don't forget to check our show notes on the website for contact information and the resources that we have discussed today. You can find that information on our website at lookingforwardourway.com. And we're looking forward to hearing from you, your feedback on this or any of our podcast episodes.